Let's talk about the other topic of discussion. During Raila Odinga's return to the country, the Communication Authority purportedly banned live airing of that event. Let's watch this clip.
We did not ban live broadcast, but we only, in the circumstances, plucked out areas which I know even you as journalists would find it difficult to meet our delay time of 7 seconds in terms of demonstrations that are vibrant everywhere, in terms of incitements, riots here and there, which can have a ripple effect. In fact, you may call it a copycat effect to the country, because then other people who are watching this live might think that is exactly the situation that is everywhere.
All right, very interesting observations there. And I can take you through the law and Article 34 of the Constitution. We can talk about all that. But let me begin with, who do I begin with? Let me begin with Sadiq. Oh no, Sadiq, I will begin with you. Let me begin with Isaac. Isaac.
Okay.
Isaac.
This was definitely a political decision. One of the, emerging habits in Kenya where institutions are sliding to political control. Because, and that's why we've had a discussion with some of my colleagues, and we thought that an organization like this really needs to be very, very independent, so that when they make a decision, especially on matters of serious national concern, such as switching off national television stations, it must really be an independent decision. It must be a decision that is backed by law. But if you look at this one, this was an illegal decision, political in nature.
No law was quoted,
and you can see Wangusi there trying to run away from it even after committing the act.
Yeah. But it was not fairly, it was illegal. It was a decision that probably was done at the spur of the moment. Sadiq, we have covered several political rallies. Tomorrow we're covering one live. It's never been an issue in this country until this one was an issue.
As a Communication Authority of Kenya banned tomorrow's televised inauguration of the president?
It's going to be done live.
Why? Have they banned it?
It's an official presidential function. It's going to be televised live.
Now, here's my take. And I'm going to speak this with all humility and with due respect to Mr. Wangusi. This is not the first time we've seen him take this kind of decisions. I think the public and the media remember too well during the digital migration, the kind of tussle and friction that existed, and which, in my opinion, we've never really, as industry colleagues and players, never recovered from that. This letter's affront was tantamount to turning letter O upside down. It doesn't make any difference. And I'm very glad media ignored him and treated that directive with the contempt that it deserves, because any attempt to limit, to curtail media freedom must be vigorously resisted by law, by fact, every other way. There cannot be a discussion about that you will whimsically provide for media freedom today because it favors the government, and tomorrow, when it doesn't favor the government, you purport to curtail it. And the point I asked is, why did the Communication Authority of Kenya see no need to issue similar directives during the presidential campaigns? We were seeing President Uhuru's rally being brought live. Raila Odinga's rallies were being televised live. Elements of also political meetings were being brought live. This was arrival, just one instant of arrival. And this is consistent with the claims and accusation that the government was oppressing the opposition, because you saw elements of the police coming in. But the media must be scared when they see another attempt of this nature coming their way. It is in fact a time, and looking at Mr. Wangusi, I'm reminded of Comrade Gabriel Mugabe, and how Mugabe used to issue those absolute orders in Zimbabwe, that some of which were unchallengeable, and he felt they were supreme. But at the end of the day, that was in fact a fallacy. The Communication Authority can only request, and I think it's in goodwill, that the media...
Actually, there's a council that makes this decision. Yes, there's
and
a council that makes the decision.
The point is, if they insist on gagging the media, then you create a platform of darkness where propaganda and fake news, you know, thrive. So this is a part of the journalism where the sun shines, and nobody should prevent the sunshine from, in fact, reaching the depths and the vaults of media. So
if we were to stand on the path of the truth, what would you say about this action?
He knows it. He knows it. It's laughable. He's taken it down himself. I'm sure it was. He must have had a lump swallowing it when he saw media houses on air. He must have felt rejected, dejected, and sort of isolated, because that is the point, and that is that was the spirit.
Okay.
That was the spirit of his attempt to gag the media. And as a colleagues, just as you try to gag the lawyers, the doctors and all that, there's got to be a rebound effect. And we, in fact, must remain strong. If one media house has made a mistake, has contravened the license and gone astray, then the Communication Authority and the bodies must deal with that particular player and not impose a blanket condemnation or restrictions on anybody else.
And the reasons are wanting. Yes. Javas, the reasons they gave, I have to say, they were wanting.
Of all things that mankind is known to swallow, words are most difficult to swallow. And that is why you can see that, for example, even Wangusi himself struggling with a bit of humility, you know, moving and feeling uneasy in his chair, trying to explain himself. An officer of government needs not to find himself or herself in such situation. That is inverted logic, that you give a directive and then a short while later you try to speak as though you are not even aware or contravening that which you had even sent out. We need to come to a point that we appreciate that when it comes to information to the public, it is not in the place of government to be charitable with such right. We know very well that there is a place of standards and ethics, and that media needs to keep within those brackets. As long as that media houses, media practitioners are kept within or are practicing within those brackets, they need to do that which they are known to do with all the bravado if they want, all the professionalism, with the intellectual rigor that calls for it, without fear or favor. And moving forward, we know, and history of this country has demonstrated, there are times government fears information and having some things publicized. I do not want to go into the events of that day, much as we know very well that it is now recorded, courtesy of the media, that we saw policemen hurling stones at various individuals and even vehicles, which is conduct and becoming even of police officers. We would like to have the Communications Authority to do great service to media and to the general public. And therefore the call would be, whether it is tomorrow, whether it is any other day, and we know very well that tomorrow various critical events are happening. Yes, there is the inauguration, but we also hear and we are aware that NAS is organizing a parallel event to, you know, to do with those who lost their lives in the post-election issues. It is important that all these issues should be captured, should be recorded, should be in the public domain.
And that cannot happen if there is any attempt to limit coverage.
Sure.
Yeah. Because what is it? Because what is it that the government didn't want the public to see from the demonstrations which happened in Nairobi, from the demonstrations which happened in Nakuru, and that they want the public to see about what will happen tomorrow in Kasarani?
Okay.
I think it's about mandate. Each government entity has its mandate. And in this occasion, the story would have been that the authority, the Communication Authority, went beyond. In fact, it's not close to its mandate, because all they exist and all we know them for is licensing, as it were. And if anything were to be, you know, if any complaints are to be given, we have another body, the Media Council of Kenya. So the story is, why is that jurisdiction interference coming in? Why does the authority feel that it is mandated to do something that is not in its boundary? The bottom line is, what we should be testing in our stories today is the actual independence, not just that they state they're independent bodies, but how they enact that independence becomes something that we should take issue with.
All right, I'd like to take a break. When we come back, I'd like to play a story that we did on that day of the kind of reaction that the media had in the ban that was legal or illegal, lacked any legal backing, lacked any law. I mean, there was nothing to it. And basically, We'll see what the media did. We take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about that, plus one more topic before we call it tonight. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to Press Pass. My name is Ken Mijung. With me in studio, Isaac Ongeri at Isaac2, Sadiq Shaban at Sadiq Shaban with a double D, at Javas Bigambo, and at Robbie Ochieng, joining me to speak to us about important issues happening in the media. And one of the issues that we're discussing tonight is the issue of the funding of the inauguration ceremony. Done deal, we have discussed that. And now we are basically discussing the blanket ban. And obviously the media houses reacted in different ways. But one thing was unifying. This was defied. Let's take a look at this story. In the letter addressed to the chief executive officers of the media houses, Francis Wangusi says that during this electioneering period, the authority requires media houses to avoid airing broadcast content that can create hatred and incitement, hence threatening the peace and cohesion in the country. Wangusi further states that due to the above, the authority directs broadcasters to cease airing live coverage of political events that were taking place today. He ends his one-page letter by asking the broadcasters to confirm that they have complied with that directive. Section 46I prescribes the responsibility of the media houses. Subsection D states that broadcasters are to, quote, gather and present news and information accurately and impartially. Further, subsection E demands that when controversial or contentious issues of public interest are discussed, broadcasters are to make reasonable effort to present alternative point of view either in the same program or in other programs within the period of current interest. Banning of content according to the Act can only be determined by the Content Advisory Council, which is responsible for the administration of the broadcasting content aspects and provision of this Act. It also provides for mechanisms of handling complaints and monitors compliance with broadcasting codes and ethics for broadcasters. Regulations according to the Act is not a unanimous decision but rather a council decision. Further, the Constitution guarantees the freedom of the media and state what the state can or can't do. In Article 34(2)(a), the state shall not exercise control over or interfere with any person engaged in broadcasting, the production or circulating of any publication or the dissemination of information by any media, or penalize any person for any opinion or view or the content of any broadcast, publication or dissemination.
And such kind of cases have been noticed.
The Communication Authority has never in the recent times purported to ban live broadcasts, this being the first irregular attempt with no law to back the directive of Director General Francis Wangusi. Ken Mijungu, NTV. All right, unanimously, the media houses ignored that letter that was circulated through the chief executive officers of the media houses. They should have done this through editorial. Probably could have had an impact. I'm just saying that because my bosses are not watching.
They're going to watch the offer.
Douglas Mwele actually agrees with Koki here. He says, who exactly regulates the media? Is it the Communication Authority or the Media Council? Wangusi, for me, seems to be overstepping his mandate. Looking at the Kick Act, it's apparent you have to do this through a council. You can't just decide, as Wangusi sit at the CA headquarters along Wayaki Way and say that this is going to happen in the interest of public good. And those are the reasons he gave. Now, as we conclude this topic, I'd like you all to ventilate on the issue of public good. Where do you draw the line when it comes to public good as media practitioners and our teachers? Where do you tell us this is where to draw the line? You're broadcasting live an event of Raila Odinga coming from the airport, headed to town, headed to Uhuru Park, to a rally that has been banned, Where do you draw the line? Let me begin with you.
Basically saying that you treat every event similar and every situation is unique. You're not telling the same story over and over again. You're not referring to history and saying, this is the sequence of what has happened, and therefore you anticipate that, telling this story will have this effect. You are basically going to, as media, tell the events as they are. And of course then, give us an opinion, maybe, or two from the different people concerned, or talkheads if you like, but again, look at the activity for what it is and give it the situation, the kind of, the kind of exposure it requires, in my opinion.
All right. Javash.
I have never spoken at the bidding of any political party. And even listening to the provisions that, in the clip that you've aired.
Both Kika and the Constitution.
Sure.
Yes.
It is important that media houses should air their content in an impartial manner, reflecting their truth for the general public, for the greater good. So question is, when, for example, Jubilee is having their rally, is it covered? Should it be covered? The answer is yes. Cover it, air it. When NASA are having their rally, is it important to cover it? Should you air it? Yes, cover it, air it. That is the essence of impartiality. Is another political party having their rally? Cover it and air the same. That is impartiality. But now, for example, the question of that day and Raila Odinga returning. There was, for example, if you ask me, nothing criminal about airing his arrival. He has arrived many times and is going to arrive many other times. Other leaders, including President Kenyan, is going to travel and arrive many other times, and it will be aired. Thing is, yes, the rally had been banned, but we had so much theater, so much drama because of all those issues. Now imagine, for example, the question of Wangusi saying and giving a directive that we're banning this. Yes, the rally was banned, but still the event took place. And in fact, when you ban something, and that's why some political psychology is not understood here by some leaders, when you ban something, people go out of their way to try and find out more about it. When in South Africa just the other day, the intelligence community banned the book that was speaking to issues to do with President Zuma, that book sold like a hot cake. People come out to find out now, what is it that somebody is afraid about? Now, for example, when you stop the media from covering a particular event, they will try to find other means and every way to cover it and then air it just to be in the face of whoever was trying to stop it. Okay. So moving forward, I think, if it's a question of impartiality, that impartiality must not be seen through the lenses of particular quarters alone. That impartiality should be a general fact that everybody standing wherever you are, sitting wherever you are, you can see it. And that's why it's important. If we are speaking to impartiality, let impartiality be that which is just true as that impartiality itself can be defined.
And then I think the media should be very careful about, the prosumer. I am a producer, I am a consumer. I put it on my on social media, okay, and I put it from the lens that I want to put it. So again, if media then doesn't give it coverage, then the prosumer basically will tell the story the way they want to. And at the end of the day, we will always, as viewers, or the public, go to social media first before we come to media.
To the
so where is your place now in this era where you are not really the custodian of information per se?
Okay.
Yeah.
Isaac, do you think that Wangusi was playing politics with regulatory matters?
I think so, because from the laws that you've just played there was really no reason at all for him to have given those orders. So I think he was playing politics. Of course, earlier we saw a number of government officials reacting on social media, Twitter and Facebook, trying to put pressure so that the media houses could actually withdraw live coverage before Wangusi took that action. So I think this was a political decision, and that is why I've said before that we really need an independent regulator. Not a regulator that is also being manipulated by political players or other players. The other thing that I also want to add is that in this era of self-regulation, I think the media should be allowed to regulate itself, play by the rules which are there. And if you look at or you watch that day's events, there was really nothing untoward. Everything was covered. The media was very cautious as usual in relaying these pictures. So I think Wangusi and company were actually wrong that day.
Ken, what if something substantial had happened during that demonstration, and it probably would have altered the course of history of political trajectory of this country, and we were not there to cover it?
What do you have in mind?
There is the kind of violence that was being meted there indiscriminately. We saw policemen stoning cars, all right? And this is not in dispute. The police headquarters has not denied this, has not refuted this. It's in evidence, is in tape, it's frozen in time and space, undisputable. If anything had happened there, for instance, we had members of the public that were going about their business. If we needed to prosecute someone from any atrocities there, then we needed evidence. And the media would have been the place to go to provide those kind of evidence which are admissible in court. If, for instance, today, a media house worth its salt, license, name, and pedigree doesn't cover the inauguration tomorrow, you will have narrated your own fate, before the very audience that you serve. You are doomed if you don't, you are doomed if you do. The kind of texture, narrative, demeanor, and editorial treatment you give tomorrow's event will further enhance or demystify that perception that viewers have about different media players. If, for example, the police or the government didn't want that particular event covered, they would have come to media, okay, perhaps I would imagine, say this is for reason or two, this is probably why we don't want to cover, and then the media would have made that decision. But even in law, as we have said, and you have quoted in your own piece, it falls flat. There is no way, and I would imagine at this time, that an event like that will not receive coverage. Who would have done that job if not us? It is our duty to do it. We cannot delegate that kind of opportunity. We have seen, and this perhaps should reverberate across the board. 2014, when Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto came back to Kenya, we were at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport covering that arrival. There was no restrictions on that particular day. Members of the media were allowed free access on the tarmacs and runways of JKIA. Members of the public ferried from wherever parts of the country were allowed access into Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. This one was different. The police didn't want, the government didn't want. But also, look at it this way. During the larger period of electioneering and petition, we've also seen members of the public, members of the media, injured in the course of doing their job. And someone would want to know, is this isolated incident, or is it tied up to the kind of intolerance, official intolerance, that's now being directed towards the press? If you do not cover an event and people do Facebook Live, Periscope Live from location, and they are feeding millions of viewers, okay, and consumers of media, what are you doing? Anything that we don't cover, we don't put on TV, we don't publish in the newspaper, we don't broadcast on radio, will be available freely on social media, all right? So we cannot sit here and allow part of our DNA, actually the very foundation of this profession, to be taken away. Going forward, we must, as media profession, I would imagine it's time for us to call our own sort of summit, a congregation, a national media conference in this country. If we have to go to Kilaguni, if we have to go to Kisumu, if we have to go to Mount Kenya Safari Club, even if you have to sit at Jivanji Garden, we have to bring the industry players together, both the practitioners and owners. And this is a time I would call for a very strong association of journalists, both political, sports, just an umbrella organization, which must be in the forefront to be able to ward off these kind of attempts to basically kick out of business. Because it's our business to tell news. It's not our business to determine, for instance, and you know this, and probably our viewers don't know, the editorial justification to cover an event varies from one event to another. Nation may want to cover an event, K24 may not wish to cover that. Okay, KBC may want to cover that as a part of national interest. Other media houses, probably because of capacity and whatnot, may not want to cover. But the bottom line is, if you're in the news business, if your business is to do news, mine news, and present it news, then you cannot delegate it. In fact, I think we are the people, like the law say, we have original jurisdiction over this job. Nobody else can tell us how to do this job better than us. So the onus is on us to defend this job, to defend this profession. It's a noble profession. This is a profession that brought down the Nixon, the former president of the US. This could be the very profession that could bring down Donald Trump. Who knows? So we must be able to ensure that whatever we do, we must put those people that are supposed to be accounted to account. Barack Obama once challenged the media and said, my job is to be the president of the United States. Your job as a media is to keep me in check. I seem to have done a better job at this time. And that was a dummy induction on the media. We should look at Kenya and say, if we have to look back and say, media versus authority versus government versus the people of Kenya, where is the scale weighing on our side? Okay. Have we been on the government side? Have we been on the side of the people? And what opportunities, in fact, the next 5 years present for us as a media? Ken, if there's any point in this, the history of this country that Kenya really is on the edge, then it is. Because we're coming from a very sharp edge. And we are heading into another transition. As if these elections has not defined anything, now we are heading into another 5 years where certainly there will be new players, certainly there will be new president at the end of 5 years. So what is it that the media will do differently as compared to what we have done probably in the last 10 years?
Yeah, I think during that summit that you won't use 300 million, it would be important to interrogate the incidences that you've told stories during the electioneering period and look at it in terms of impact. In terms of impact in satisfying the social contract you have with the public, in terms of impact on your profession, in terms of impact on outlook of opinions created from your content. Because at the end of the day, you did cover the event, so what was the result?
Okay. That's the measure.
Exactly,
that's how it should
that's
be measured.
the measure. So therefore, should the media cower because of directives? Should the media give equal opportunities to stories, let people interpret? Should the media play its role in giving direction as to what people should think about, isn't it?
Okay.
So those are the questions that the media really has to ask itself.
Very, very, very interesting observations indeed. But at the end of the day, also the question that you ask is where you stand as the media. What kind of trust, what kind of opportunities the world outside offers to you? Because in the face of criticism, in the face of instant messaging and information, how much more can the media do? And I just like to make this as this comment as we move to our next topic, because I think this is exhausted. We invited the Communication Authority to give them an opportunity to respond to this. And as you can guess already, I spoke to Mercy Wanjau, and Mercy responded saying she was not in the office. And she advised me to speak to one Wambua. And indeed, I told her, I don't have Wambua's contact. Could you please send Wambua's contact to me? Or alternatively, speak to them in the office and let them know we're having a show. We're going to speak about this and send someone. I never got a reply from Communication Authority.
Are you surprised? Are you surprised?
Very characteristic.
Are you surprised?
And I just said very characteristic of the CA. All right, gentlemen and lady, let's go to the last topic of discussion. The election period is done. And let's say it's done with the inauguration tomorrow. We are no longer flying the Decision 2017 banners in the studio. So it means it's basically done. But questions are still abound. The questions that you're asking, at the end of the day, what will be used to measure what the media did? How did we report? How did we cover the elections, for example? How do we cover the inauguration? How did we cover the Supreme Court? How did we cover post and pray? How did we cover the violence that rocked different parts of the country? But there's a lot of sentiments that accompanies this. And one of the strongest things that is saying that perhaps the politicians set too much agenda for the media. Let me begin with the Journalists Association, Parliamentary Journalists Association. Do you think they set too much of the agenda that we have seen in the last few months?
Actually, that is true. But let me first of all make a correction. It is actually called the Political Journalists Association of Kenya. Actually, it is true that the media let the politicians to set the agenda and run away with the, the political season in terms of making key decisions and, even deciding what we were watching and reading during that particular period. I know that in Kenya, despite the fact that, of course, we've been trying and we are at least above so many other countries when you compare the media in Kenya and our neighbors and even other developed African countries like maybe probably Nigeria and South Africa. But we have a big problem in our country, ethnicity, which is actually hindering or actually interfering or manipulating how we come out as a media. When you are in these newsrooms, we have this habit of embedding certain reporters to various political players. Like, for example, you will find that a guy who is from Central Province will be sent to cover Jubilee events, and somebody who comes from Western Kenya will be sent to cover, NASA events. This eventually makes these people to even believe that they are working for those particular political players, and they even get owned by those political players from their regions. This is one thing that we must find a way of dealing with, so that we nationalize the manner in which we engage during political.
How would you do that? Ken, sorry. Ongiri, how would you do that, for instance? And you see, the unfortunate incident of a month ago where that helicopter went down at Lake Nakuru National Park, and then we realized most of the people there were actually journalists being ferried by politicians to go and do campaigns or publicity. Certainly, we don't need more incidents of that nature to be able to reveal the kind of underhand tactics, as it were, if at all it exists, from your parliamentary reporters and what have you. How would we do it differently? And this is self-criticism. How would we do it differently? For example,
would we avoid being embedded?
We have seen, and this is in public domain, the articles are there, the authors are there, reporters are there. For the very long time, you see a certain reporter only doing Jubilee rallies. a certain reporter only does nasaralis consistently during this time, that even if that person were to go and leave, you would imagine as if newsroom would not run a story. But as media, how would we do it differently?
I think, you know, there are people who are doing it differently already. In some situations, you'll find that you get people, we have to nationalize the system.
The political reporters who are in parliament, would they be willing to come and do sports and I be go and do politics, for instance, in an attempt to nationalize this issue?
You know, for example, at Nation, and I speak authoritatively for NTV because I work for NTV, you cannot make a special request and say, let Ken cover this. The editors will not agree to it. They'll send for you a reporter who they want to cover it.
Actually, it's the editors who do it. It's the editors who do it. They're the ones who decide, let's send Mijungu to go and
what
cover.
If we change editors? What if we change editors?
Yes.
What if we change editors?
No, look, political reporting.
Would we change the mentality? Because here's the deal, And allow me to finish.
I think
we have had, we have had a generation of editors who have been in the newsroom for the last 20 years. We have new crop of journalists with new thinking, new dimension coming up, but they don't get to sit on the desk to make decisions. So you'd find and I'm saying this with tremendous respect to my seniors in the profession. This particular editor may have started off in KBC, went to K24, went to KTN, now is in Nation, and this is probably spent 7 years in each place. So the accumulated wealth is over probably 2 decades. He has built relationships and roots in the newsroom such that if he says Ken Mijungu will do NASA events, you cannot, cannot challenge that. Okay. But what does it do to an opportunity cost that would probably then arise if, for example, we allow young generation. We have members of parliament who are very young, senators who are very young, governors who are very young. Yes. Is it time that kind of mentality comes to newsroom?
Of course, we know that at times it's known old hands know how to handle the scalpel better. And that's why maybe in media houses, the older folks, the editors, know how to organize their team. It's a question of internal housekeeping that maybe individual media houses need to see how to rethink in light of what we have continued to witness in this country. Political reporting in Kenya by soundbite and the stormy nature of also reporting, going back to the old question of the newsworthiness of an issue, is what continues to ail us and pain us. Because when you look at even how events and issues were reported during the campaigns, it was a question of mere soundbites. Because look, Kenyans cannot be everywhere all the time. Now look, they will depend on what the journalists will air of a particular coverage, for example, in Kwale, a particular coverage in Kasipul Kabondo, in Kakamega, wherever it is. The thing is this, when even that news item now is carved and then served to the nation, news time, etc., they have the latitude, the liberty to choose whatever they want to air, because you don't air the entire rally.
Yes.
And that's why I'm speaking to matters of soundbite and seeing what is it that is more interesting to the viewers, what is it that is more controversial,
or made news,
or made news, etc. And at times we know very well that controversy sells in politics, and that's why at times the focus is also there.
That, yeah.
But much more, we know very well that we cannot deny the hard fact of this envelope journalism that is also taking place. And that's why certain individuals, by the way, certain reporters in media houses will report issues favorably to do with a certain politician because they know very well that they have been pocketed.
Yes.
And that is the challenge. Now, fact is, maybe a certain politician has pocketed a certain reporter. The editor does not know that such a reporter has been pocketed. All right? So the content that this reporter will be bringing will be content, or even if it's a question of a story written, that favors a certain political party or a certain politician, etc. Because you know very well, as I do, that media has shaped political careers in this country. And media has destroyed certain political careers. And it's just a question of the pen of the reporter or how a particular reporter has reported an issue. No, fact is, Sadiq.
I need the lady. Sadiq. I need the lady to speak also.
Yes. It's about being pocketed and brown envelopes. But the fundamental question the media must ask itself is, why are their reporters pocketed?
Okay.
That's the fundamental question. Is it the pay? Is it the environment? Is it the media policy?
Lack of ethics,
Is
maybe?
it ethical considerations? Are those the issues? Is that what is modeled down more from the senior managers upwards to the reporters? For me, the key issue would be what is the attention economy of political issues, and why do we give it so much coverage at the end of the day at expense of telling stories? And of course then, what do politicians do? They are actors in nature. They know their prominent sources. The first person you want to tell a story about will start from the political viewpoint, so they've learned to play your game. If I throw a few uncivil words in public, you will run as media to tell that story. Who insulted who? What was said? How big was the insult? What was the impact of that?
If there was a fight, a physical fight.
Of course, the politician is somebody who is out there to make his name. Secondly, we're also saying that does the media really want to dig into the issues political? Who gets what when? Or do they just want to tell stories that will create sensationalism? And of course, then advertisements come in. So the media itself has to question, why do you give prominence to these issues?
And Ken, questioning, and allow me to, I'm not apportioning blames. I'm actually just asking this question, which could well even, refer to me in some breadth. During this period, we have seen a lot of journalists leaving newsrooms to work as communication directors in counties. Some are working for parliamentary commission, some are working for politicians, government institutions. Many people would look at that as progression in terms of your career, taking it to the next level. But there are those who probably would imagine that that is a result of the too much comfort that we are having, in fact, with politicians. So opinion is actually divided on this. But also, what is it that sometimes sets off the very people that we are supposed to cover and sting us back? There's a story currently doing rounds on the social media, allegedly, that Manoa Esipisu called a certain reporter to complain about certain tonnage and contents of that reporting, and it was alleged that that phone call conversation in fact happened. And this kind of communication is a little bit uncomfortable, because there are very clear channels of complaints if someone feels aggrieved, if a story didn't favor you, whether it was in fact not factual, not balanced, and all that. So I think these are kind of expectations that we must be able then to address. If we continue to be very close to the people that we must supposed to hold into account, if tomorrow something goes wrong, media should not take that moral high ground. I am very embarrassed as a media profession that in just one instant of election, we got a new name, Githeri Media. Yes. That name just came out of nowhere during this, and unfortunately, it seems to define everything else we do. Even if fake news does. Even if we make a sincere, genuine human error, we are not considered. That it's just Githeri. So how long are we going to shed off this? And are we at the danger of getting more tag names along the way?
Okay. I think the question, again, we should ask is about, like you said, career plateau. Where does, the end of a journalist's career come in? What is the alternative? And where do you go from here? Why is it that we don't have wizened reporters? Maybe some of us grew in an era where we watched Catherine Kasavuli forever growing on television. Why is it that maybe young reporters, they're very young reporters, where are the senior reporters, the very senior ones? Where are the editors, who've grown and passed on the baton? Why is it that there are so many young faces? I'm telling you, in the media, there are too many young faces. You can't even, at least you've grown in the media, we can know you. But then there are too many people who come and go. Why is there lack of that stability in the media? I think that's a question.
I think on that one, it's obvious out there that the media is facing challenges, economic challenges. And, in this era where we've seen the government coming up with a newspaper, actually, a magazine, an advertorial magazine called My Government. This has actually denied the media revenue, and that is why you can see they have come up with various tactics of, taming growth, and to cut costs. And of course, that's why you can see so many people are running away from the media to join county governments, because they are looking for that security and also, for greener pastures. The other thing that is also a big issue, and you've spoken about it, is corruption. In the Kenyan media, when we have journalists or senior, of course, those top managers fighting for tenders with the Nairobi business community, then we must have a big problem. It's a big problem in the sector. That is actually media players must find a way of fighting corruption in the media. I've seen lately, if you want to know that this is almost becoming a pandemic, both the Nation and the Standard Media Group are already running the brown envelope advert.
The papers, yes.
Yeah, this should show you that we are facing a serious problem.
It's a real concern.
It's a real concern.
Yes.
And it is something that in future we need to find a way, we need to begin discussions on how we can deal with this particular issue.
I don't know why he wants to consign things to the future.
You should do it right now.
Why not tell us the story?
At this
Right now.
The future begins now.
But of course, I appreciate that the media is working in a very rough terrain. I recall just a couple of months ago when Nation Media itself was covering a certain event live, and the politician at that event says that you should boycott Nation Media Group. Yet it was
the truth.
Yes,
James Orengo, he spoke about
very true,
the truth.
very true. Yeah. And yet it is the only media house that was broadcasting
that event
live
at that time.
Live. How insensitive can even politicians be? That tells you one thing, that media houses should not be impresarios to politicians.
It's true.
Because politicians care not about the interests of the media.
All right.
All they want is you to carry things favorably about them.
Maybe just the question is, really, what is media selling?
Okay.
Because if you're talking about revenue from advertising and that's failing, so then what's your product?
What is the product? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're concluding. My director is on my ear. It's about to bite me. We need to conclude. Giving you final talks or final opportunity to make a comment on how then do we ensure that politicians don't set the agenda for us? And is it easy, or we just accept? We can also accept that they will set the agenda as long as we're here, as we conclude. Start with your 30 seconds.
We cannot exclusively and exhaustively rather say this is how it's going to be. This is a very changing, it's a mutating environment. The realities are different each week, each day. So we have to adapt to the changes and make sure that our response to the emerging challenges and opportunities reflect our will, in fact, to be able to move forward and to surge ahead. Ken, just something on the presidential inauguration, that if I know tomorrow the kind of it will be a jungle out there for the media. People need to spare a thought for journalists who are going to work there tomorrow. Cameras will be so many and all that. If only the government or the office in charge of transition in future would pick from what South Africa did with the burial of Nelson Mandela, where they settled for one producer who produced content and then supplied the raw feed to the journalists for their own broadcast. I think that would save
I think they're already doing something.
Well, I think we need to see that, because these national events are becoming chaotic, and we need probably some kind of order. But going forward, if anybody tries in future to be able to attempt, or even contemplate gang the media, we should stand up. If we have to take demonstrations to the streets as members of the media, which we have done in the past,
it will be covered live.
We will cover it live with live views. We'll do those opinions with us on the road. We'll take the OBs out there. We must protect this profession, and we must resist attempts to be able to gag. Okay. The same people that want to gag the media are the very recipients of the goodwill of the media. They are probably in the offices because of the media visibility and branding they received. So they must not deny others opportunity to be able to cross the river.
All right, Isaac.
Yeah, during the just past political season, we saw a lot of, interferences or even attacks against the media practitioners. A number of journalists were actually attacked in in the countryside. And what I want to say about this is that as media, we must come out very, very strongly when we are under siege, when we are on attack. We must defend our independence. And it is we've had problems before, you know, media, for the media to decide to even run a story on something that is affecting them is normally a big problem. We must find a way, or we must find a way of defending ourselves so that we can keep our independence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, my take is that objective and effective media practice should continue being carried out with the requisite tincture of caution. One, so that the laws governing the practice of media should not be violated. And also to the extent that media practitioners want to engage with the political elite or the political class. Because we know very well that there is, after 2013, for example, media were thought to have gone to bed with government. And later on we saw even government efforts themselves to gag media. Media is very important. Media helps record, document history. And we know here that media then enables history, as I said earlier. Now, history here in terms of its documentation is not a question of just a matters phantasmagoria. If we are looking at history as a movement, if we are looking at,
can do you have the in-house dictionary?
We'll call him to explain this to us.
If we're looking at history as a movement,
Yes.
then media itself is an enabler of that movement, and then media practice itself should be an effective movement that makes sense of events and happenings of society.
All right.
Media still remains the body that must publish or be damned. That's the bottom line. And therefore, we should revere our profession. We should actually take time to respect the position that the society gives us as the fourth estate and be there to stand in public interest. I also think that we should again build the confidence of the public that in trueness and, you know, just to be true to our profession, that we collect data, we look for facts, we verify them and tell stories. And therefore, no matter what circumstance, we still must remain faithful to who we are.
All right. A good place to end. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Sadiq Shaban, Isaac Ungeri, Javas Bigambo, and Kokyo Cheng. Thank you very much for coming. Remember, this conversation goes off air but continues online. Thank you very much for watching our program.